So here we go. Welcome. We have just been meeting up front and we have been overwhelmed by that great participation rate. Actually, we have already 10 minutes before the call. So I'm glad you could all meet it. You made the time and will join us for the next 1.5 hours. This event is brought to us by BerLearn and is powered by Elevation. BerLearn, for all who don't know about it yet, go to their homepage, check it out. It's a great community for HR and L&D people, being super eager and passionate about getting us impactful, innovative people development opportunities like this meeting today. And Elevation, I think Karin, you can better explain that and give us some insights on who is powering today's session.
Fantastic. So thank you very much. And first of all, I'm super excited to be here today and want first and foremost to thank Ola, her team, and BerLearn for making it possible and for the amazing and fantastic and fun collaboration. And it also is I'm very, very happy to see how many people are so enthusiastic and interested in strategic L&D. And it makes me happy because it very much resonates with what it is we do and we believe in at Elevation. So maybe just in a word, my name is Karin, as Vanessa said. I'm the GM of Elevation in Europe. And Elevation is a new skills management platform. So imagine that you could take your L&D decisions using data-driven and L&D decision-making technology. So we give your organization the tool and the data to upgrade your L&D activity to be more evidence-based and to measure real skill abilities that match the organizational needs and the goals. And we are here to reposition the L&D activities in organizations and to support it to be more strategic, like a strategic asset and a profit center rather than a benefit or a nice to have. So if these topics interest you, if you just want to chat, I would be super open and happy for any conversation or a coffee, tell you more about what we do or just chat generally about strategic L&D. So I'll just put my email and my LinkedIn profile or my link to my LinkedIn profile here in the chat below. So feel free to reach out. And Vanessa, I'm giving this stage back to you and to our fantastic speakers here at the panel.
Thank you very much, Karim. And so that you know who is guiding you through today's panel, my name is Vanessa Gruber. I've been in L&D and HR roles for over 20 years. And the company I had throughout that time was basically making up my mind on how L&D can drive business success. So that was a constant company. And therefore, I'm super glad and happy that I can guide you and support you through that panel today, and especially being accompanied by the great panelists. So it is Gudrun Leibel, she's L&D responsibility at HelloFresh. It is Avi Sneer, CEO and founder of Elevation, which we've heard about already. It's Alexi Billiard within L&D working for Blinkist. And it's Dan Wallach, strategic HR consultant. And as they are a lot better in introducing themselves, I will guide it over to you guys in a second. But first of all, it's you, because this is an interactive session today, which you didn't know about maybe yet. But we want to hear from you as well once in a while during this next 1.5 hours. So if you could please go to our Slido survey and give us some insights into where you are actually coming from. What is your backgrounds? So just to give us a bit of an idea of who is joining us today. But using the time now while you're putting that in, I will pass it over, and Gudrun, I'll start ladies first with you.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Gudrun Leibel. I'm actually a corporate soldier with 9 years of experience, also in a leading FMCG company with Mars. And actually I'm coming from business partnering. So my background is really in HR business partnering. And I moved to learning and development only a couple of years ago, and also dared to jump from corporate world into startup or scale-up world. And since last year, I'm actually enjoying leading the learning and development team at HelloFresh headquarters in Berlin, where I'm trying with a very small but powerful team to have our people and our employees stay and grow with the company for longer. And I'm quite excited to be here today and to learn from all of you and to also share a bit of my experience.
Great, thank you. Avi, if I may ask you next.
Sure, so thank you everybody, Ola, BerLearn, and all the friends from the panel. Super happy to be here. Like you said, I'm Avi from Elevation, and I think maybe just after my family, learning is my biggest love. I believe it's the fire of life, and it's something like a fire of creation, and this is why I'm keep trying to find ways to light this fire. By the way, next in line in most favorites, it's hummus. I eat hummus 3 times a week without the pita bread, just the hummus. And this is me.
Thank you, Avi. Alex, may I ask you to give us a short intro?
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm an organizational psychologist with almost 20 years of experience in development topics. I'm saying development because it's organizational development, but also learning and development, and currently the domain owner for people experience and development at Blinkist.
Perfect, great. And Dan.
Thank you. So I'm Dan Valach. I'm also a veteran in the HR field. I've been around for over 20 years. I actually come from development, only not organizational development, software development. I used to be a developer, and 15 years ago I changed to HR, and I led quite a few HR departments in different companies. The last one was HelloFresh, where I helped the company grow from 20 employees to 500. And ever since then, I'm actually a strategic consultant to HR in different high-tech companies in Israel and in Europe. L&D is also something that is very, very close to my heart, and developing it and helping companies and departments in this area is part of my passion. And I'm guessing that's why I'm here. I think that's it.
Okay, great. So really great having you on today, and really, really excited to see your insights and hear your insights and experiences so far. Just one last housekeeping before we go into our first question. May I ask everyone, because you are able to unmute yourselves, but make sure that everyone can get most of today. Please stay muted. And please do use the Slido at Elevation to ask questions, because if you use that via Zoom, it will always blink up, and this might be quite disturbing according to the amount of people we do have today. And we will try to make time at the end to really go through them and answer, if not already answered during the panel. So in that case, nothing holds us back. Let's go. Our first question for today is really on how do we reposition L&D to be seen more as an investment and value generator instead of a cost-draining activity, which we are always quite often faced with. Dan, as a consultant, what insights could you give us into that one?
So I think partly as the same as marketing was a few years ago, L&D is considered today still as a whole to throw money in it. There's no real understanding of why. I mean, there is engagement, satisfaction, a bit of development. We don't really know why we throw money there, but we know everybody does it, so we should do it too. And every company I go to says, okay, so they do it, so they give a budget there. Okay, I'll do the same because we understand it's increasing engagement. And I think we need to change the language. We need to start understanding that we need to start talking in ROI and KPIs. If we're investing in learning and development, if we're putting quite a lot of money on these issues, then we need to have clear KPIs to why we do it, and we need to have clear KPIs on how successful that was. And I think the most important thing is how does this affect the bottom line, the business bottom line. If we're sending someone, if we're deciding on sending someone to an upskilling workshop, or if we want to reskill some of our employees, we're not just doing that to make them happy or because everybody else doing it. We need to make sure that we know why we're sending them there. And the second part is we need to measure how they did while they were there in order to have a much better understanding and much better insights when we talk to the stakeholders that want us to send these people. And then if we have this data, we can start analyzing things. We can say, okay, if we want to go in that direction, this is the kind of L&D that you need. This is the kind of development we want to invest in. And these are the results that we're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And when we have something that is not working, we also need to report that. We have an issue in the X department. How do we know that? Because we know how to measure the development of our employees. It's not something that the industry is used to. If I'm talking to most L&D people, in most systems that I know, there is no way to know the KPI when sending someone and the ROI when someone did some kind of course or training or something like that. So I think that basically the language needs to start changing and the motivation needs to start changing.
Avi, being the CEO and founder of Elevation, from your perspective, what else can we do? I mean, Dan's insights were super good in changing the language and going more into the mathematics and KPIs, basically. What else can you share with us?
So basically, this is the point that we noticed from the companies that we're working with. We saw that L&D is becoming more and more business-centric in a lot of them. But again, like Dan said, not enough measurement and not everybody understands the real value. The missing part was really around the ROI or being able to measure it. Now, I don't know if maybe some of you probably heard about it, but in the 70-20-10 Institute, they built this 4 L&D business models. I can send the link after, but they show really nicely the right way to be value creator in your organization. It's around being as an L&D, business-focused, strategic learning and development, rather than being a learning-focused operational L&D. Sometimes, I mean, I'm also really like all the methodology, and I can talk hours about if we need to do the training online or offline and live, but everything that value creators does kind of demonstrate measurable business impacts in business or in some kind of quantified ROIs. And I believe we will shortly speak about examples also. So in 3 points, be able to measure, be more data-driven, build the programs to be aligned with business strategy, and take it from a point of L&Ds like an employee benefit to a point that it's a benefit for the business.
Perfect, thank you. Gudrun, coming away from the consulting and providing area into like really doing it. So you have set up the L&D at HelloFresh. What were the metrics you were setting up to set up your annual L&D budget, basically? How did you define them to make sure you got the budget you needed?
Yes, and I think I'm still in the phase of setting up the L&D budget. So just to say this, so when I joined HelloFresh a year ago, there was basically nothing. So I mean, there were a lot of trainings being offered, but it was very much on demand. It was not really linked to business strategy. So I was basically starting from scratch, and I was trying to collect as much data as possible, as was already said. So I was doing training need analysis. I was talking with our executives. I was looking at exit surveys to understand why people are actually leaving us, and also breaking down company OKRs to actually how could learning and development support in reaching these company OKRs and the strategy. And then basically I came up with a few metrics or KPIs that I want to tackle. And for me, one of the, let's say, main areas always engagement, because we all know that increased engagement just leads to higher productivity, lower churn, lower absence rates, etc. Overall, we saw that we need to invest into leadership capabilities, because as many startups, I think we are facing the same issue or the same challenge, that we have a lot of very junior people getting people management responsibilities rather soon, but nobody really tells them how to do this, right? So this is another focus area we set for ourselves. And then the last part was more around internal succession and actually showing people how they can develop internally. And this doesn't only mean by sending them to trainings, but also providing them with development opportunities. And I'm a big fan of this 70-20-10 model that you just mentioned, Avi. So more focusing on the 70% of the model rather than on formal learning. And I haven't cracked, let's say, I haven't found the secret sauce yet. So you probably, if you ask me like in half a year, we'll be able to share more results with you. But this is basically how I structured the budget, and then also tried to prove it with some, let's say, calculations and estimates. And of course, especially churn is a big factor when it comes to learning and development. So if you see that people are leaving the company because they feel there are not enough development opportunities, this is always a good, let's say, justification also, and a good data point that you can nicely monetize also when talking to your senior stakeholders. So this would be the areas, probably if somebody asked me what to look at, that I would be looking at, apart from people being happy because they have been sent to a training, which is also important, but it's not the most important thing.
Right, thank you, Gudrun. Going and speaking about learning and development, I mean, when I started my job, our main metrics was always to see how the completion rate was, how happy people were with what we set up there. Alex, from your point of view, working in a corporate L&D function, the completion rate is often used as a metric, but what others are you using to really measure success?
Well, I actually work for a startup. So I think I used to work in corporate, and where, you know, the metrics were much more defined or much more granular. The truth is there is not a big budget these days, so there's not much to measure. And success often, at least in what I know from startup world, is not measured. Completion rate obviously is not a measure for me, because, you know, just sitting in doesn't mean that you really have, you know, the skill and the competency. The question for me is, you know, what should we do instead of what we're not doing? And that really means, how does a learning have an impact in the life? That obviously is a very difficult question, and it's not new, because this has been, you know, in learning psychology, it's been always a question: how do you actually define a measure, and then how do you check for it? If we just talk clearly about, you know, learning in the classic sense of taking trainings and courses, I think there's a lot of interesting things coming up on how you can measure by using, you know, real projects from the workplace, for example, instead of having set up examples that you have in the courses, or really link the learning to the work that I have every day, which also requires a lot of work from part of the leads, the manager, from the person themselves. And my experience is, when you start doing that and doing this very thoroughly, people don't want to go to trainings anymore, because they're like, oh, there's so much work, and, you know, and I have to write this paper, and what impact I'm trying to have, and if I had one. But this is how I would do the measure if I could do it from scratch, is starting from, why do I need to do the learning? How is it probably going to impact my work? And how is that, through my work, going to impact the company? We talked about it, business metrics. I think we'll talk about it a bit later. How do you deduct that into learnings and measure it? The truth is, at this point, is if the people are happy and if they feel like they learned something, that is a success rate. But obviously that is very much on the surface, and I would love to go much more in the other direction, but that's still work in progress. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we've heard a lot about various metrics we can use. What I was wondering throughout my career is the return on investment is a very powerful tool which is used all across the businesses, but super rarely used to prove the success for L&D and HR. So why do you think organizations don't demand L&D activity to prove ROI? Den and Avi, if you might share some insights from your experiences.
First of all, I think we got used to it. I think that there's like, there is no, I mean, really, I know it's funny, but it is this the situation, because we got used to sending people to development and not asking why are we sending them. And that's kind of we need to change the mindset. And I think we need to change the mindset of ourselves as L&D leaders. We need to think differently about the way we talk about learning and development. We need to speak differently about why we do things. In order to do this, we need to do the work. We need to understand when sending someone or doing some kind of work with our employees, we need to understand why we're doing it. Not just because we need to train someone, but because we have a reason. We need to understand how that connects to the business. We need to be much more connected, much more closer to the business. And then I think the change can start. And we can start talking about KPIs. We can start talking about the difference between each course and be much less generic and much more relevant to each and every individual or each and every group. So I think the change starts with us. I think the second part, which I'm guessing Avi will talk about, is tools. We need much more tools in order to start having a discussion about how do we influence this, how not just completion, but what happened during the course for us to understand where we want to go or what we want to change. Once again, I'm sorry for repeating this, but again, if I'm looking at the revolution that HubSpot did in the marketing field, it's exactly the same. They gave tools to the marketing people in order to give ROI. If we do the same, if we start understanding, if we have the tools that can analyze the data and can go through each and every professional and see what happened throughout the course and what is the motivation for us to sending this person or the other, or this group or not the other, this is already changing. But I agree with Alex, which it's a very complex kind of work, and it's a lot of work for us to build the right infrastructure for it to be easy for our employees. Avi.
So I think, first of all, yeah, it's also about the tools. I mean, when we're building our platform, we noticed that as an L&D, we're not really sure what are the skills that we have today in the organization. And then we're using completion rate because we said, okay, we know this is the syllabus. We want him to be trained for Excel. He's going somewhere. He's coming back. What's happened in between? I believe maybe he have all the syllabus done. Now, we're creating some kind of assessment for skills gap analysis to put you in a point that you can build the programs in a whole different way. But I think maybe it will be easier if we'll talk about use cases to show some kind of measurements in ROI. And first of all, and I agree with Alex, and we spoke about it a few months ago, not everything is measurable, and it's hard to measure learning. But I'll try to give some business case examples from our side. So we saw companies using learning activities for a few use cases. First of all, upskilling, right? Like general upskilling, benefits. We want to create stickiness. We want to use it for retention. And then we can also measure it because we can put KPIs of we invested X hours of training in this person, and we saw that people that were like to be trained for X hours stayed longer in the company, for example. But the other cases that were, I think, more interested was something like intermobility tool, okay? Or job leveling, or using it for team formation. Now, these are the parts that you can really demonstrate more value immediately. We worked in Israel with one of the leading financial institutes, and they needed to hire 20 data analysts. From the other side, we know that if you're taking into calculation all the overhead that you have, if these people will be not relevant for the bank and the cost that you have for external hiring, we can show the numbers and we can show ROI. Okay, every cost of internal hiring versus external is around 15%, and the cost of employee turnover, it's around 20% of a yearly salary. We can definitely argue about the numbers, but this is a great case of ROI and learning activity. And in job leveling, companies also, they started to look at skills and knowledge as another metric for employee feedback, something that is maybe more objective than just a manager feedback, and promoting managers from within. in a way that we train them with the right skills can also demonstrate ROI if you're looking at getting managers from like external hiring. So in general, even around upskill and retention, I think we're doing the right activities. It's just the missing part of actually how to measure it and put it, like Dan said, in our mind, saying we did this and this is why it creates value and it's not a cost center for the organization.
Great, thank you, Avi. Before I move it over to Alex and Gudrun, and maybe share some insights from your area on ROI, I would like to include you, our audience, again, and do a quick poll on how do you all measure the success of your L&D activities. So if you could move over to slido.com at elevation again, then please let us know. And Alex and Gudrun, what is your experiences in, are you thinking, Gudrun, thinking about setting up an ROI measure as well to prove what you're doing there? Or Alex, have you done that in the past already? Have you any experiences on that one?
Oh, I'll go then. Sorry. I had some experience, but if you allow, I'll add some more philosophical thoughts to this whole topic, because I really agree what Avi and Dan said. I think also we as L&D professionals, we need to also to understand what are we selling to the people, right? Because in the beginning it was everybody needs to be trained and we send everybody to trainings, and we realized that doesn't work. Then we said, you know, you own your own development. That's what we often say. It's like, people come and say, develop me, right? A lot of the people in the audience will know that. And then we say, no, this is your thing. And then we leave them, but they're overwhelmed. I'm still overwhelmed. You know, learning has exploded in the last few years. It's impossible for me to know everything, but then we leave them alone. We don't give them the business metrics, why something is important. And also we don't give them an outlook, why is learning important? And so I think we need to educate our people why learning is important, when it is important, and how this can help not only the organization, but can help you. And Gudrun said it before, it's not just the training, it's how do I develop skills to, you know, move laterally or up in leadership, whatever that is. But I think we also need to find a language that is, you know, understood by the business. I think we haven't been too good, and then we're learning now. You know, we're talking about ROI and KPI, we're talking about business metric and goals. I think that's the right direction, but that really looks at the management side of it. We also need to look at the, you know, the end user, and I love to use all of this language, right? It's, you know, performance marketing had to prove at some point why, you know, how many people they're going to get for €5. And we need to also show what we're going to get as an impact into the company if we spend those €5. So I think we need to educate ourselves and our people before we start, again, adding some new complexity about business and KPI and ROI, which I think is important. But I think we still need to take the step in between and start translating top down what is business and bottom up what are the needs, and kind of marry those two. And I haven't seen the perfect system yet, but yeah, sorry, didn't answer your question, but I just wanted to add this thought about, you know, where are we standing in all of it instead of just going into the details.
Perfect, thank you, Alex. Gudrun, any thoughts from your end?
I mean, not much to add, honestly, from my end. I think L&D has done a good job. If people are satisfied with their manager, probably feel they have good internal development opportunities, irrespective of their background, which is also important, and probably a role that learning and development has to play, and they want to stay and grow with the company. So because I really feel that this, especially this internal succession, really is an added benefit of a good learning and development system in place. And we all know that buying people from the external world is way more expensive than developing them internally. So I would say this is all I have to say to this question.
Perfect, thank you. And yeah, speaking about satisfaction, seeing your poll results, satisfaction is still the #1 metric we are using. And I was quite surprised to see actually nearly a quarter of you still not doing any metrics on that one. So be it the lucky ones who don't struggle with the budgets, or the lucky ones having a good standing in the organizations as well. Brings me to our next part, L&D being a strategic partner. So with all the metrics showing that we are not only a cost center is an essential part for us to support our standing and making sure that we are an important strategic partner and seen as such. But before we dive deeper into that topic, I would like to quickly also again reach out to you as our audience and see, where do you see yourselves as L&D leaders? How do you perceive your roles in the organization? So while waiting for the results, Gudrun and Alex, may I come over to you again? Working within companies, I know from personal experience, HR and L&D is often seen as the support function for up or reskilling of employees. And this is basically it, rather than being a strategic partner to the management team sitting at the table. How are you both tackle this and make sure you are at the table at strategic decisions and are seen as a strategic partner?
Yeah, so I already mentioned that I'm coming from business partnering, which is always seen as the strategic partner in HR. And when I moved to L&D, I experienced that sometimes L&D is seen as the executor for whatever business partners or the management team have been thinking about. I personally really believe that every person working in an HR department has a strategic role to fulfill and should also be able to act as a strategic support, be it if you're in contract management or in talent acquisition. And I would say throughout my career, I was working with various senior management teams. Some of them were more open-minded, some of them more reluctant when it came to HR and L&D initiatives. And I think it's really on us to change this perception. And I think you don't have to wait to be invited to the table, but you have to kind of invite yourself to the discussion and prove that L&D can add value as a strategic business partner. And I think in L&D we need to know some numbers. So I think we also should be able to talk a bit about what's going on in the company. So you have to have open eyes and ears, and also talk to other department heads, etc. And really make sure that you're not only being content providers. I think it always makes sense then, rather than asking, okay, why do you need this training or this learning initiative? I would always ask the question, what problem are you trying to solve here? Or what challenge are we trying to tackle here to get to the actual need? So this is something I think we can change the way we ask questions. And what I personally learned since joining HelloFresh, coming from corporate background, I'm just prepared to come with more data to back up my decisions, because first of all, sometimes it's easier to communicate data, and it also takes some emotions out of the discussion.
Well, yes, I love to use numbers, and I think I mentioned it before. We need all to know the language that is spoken in business, and not just KPI ROI, but but this has been a truth throughout all of the projects I've been doing. If you talk money, then usually you get the attention, right? And I think it's not just the money and saying, okay, we invest 100 euros and we get 5,000 back. That's one thing that already Dan said it. It's already very complex. But it's also connecting the dots, and that's something that I like to do. And if we talk about learning and development in a larger context and not just about training, I often tell them, I say, okay, what are and this is very, L&D 2.0, I call it future skill mapping. I ask them, what are the skills you will need in 6 months? And that's when you get big eyes, and everybody's like, what are you talking about? I said, if we know you're going to project your work, you're going to project users, how many new customers, you should project what are the skills we need. Because what happens often, and that's certainly true for startups, is they get to the point where they need a skill and then they just buy it. You get a senior, you get an expert from outside. And there's a big problem with this in many ways. First of all, it's much more expensive to recruit because the person needs to be onboarded. That's one thing. Recruiting is very expensive. If we talk about experts, we're easily in the 40s, 50s, 60,000 euros. And then at some point I ask myself the question, and I think a lot will agree, is like, what I can do with 60,000. You know, I mean, especially in the startup world, that's a lot of money, and you can be lucky if you have that budget. And then I go back and say, do we have 2 people or 1 person that could actually, you know, get that skill? And imagine that you would spend those 60,000 euros on 1 person saying, you know what, you get 3 months off, 6 months off, here's the money, go get your skills. Obviously that needs to be, you know, regulated in your contract at some point so people don't just leave, but that is the easy part. But then, you know, develop those skills internally. And that's what Gudrun said. This is real development, right? We develop our people. This is going to have an impact on the branding. It's going to have an impact on the culture. For all of you that do engagement surveys, external, so we block development internally. And that's the things. And once you can show that and say the 60,000 you're spending on the recruiting could actually be used by developing and having all of this, you know, extra positive effects, that's usually when you get the attention. So my experience really is, I'm going to say, unfortunately, it's through the money, because I think there's so much more than just the money part, but that's usually what triggers the discussions and showing them how the connect the dots are. And, you know, often we're not even, you know, the providers, we're seen as a service center, right? You deal with my academy budget and I'm going to ask you if I can spend 100 euro on a book. That's what happens often also in startups. So starting to show the complexity of it and speaking the language, I think is my way to make it sound valuable and then also act on it and make it valuable, right?
Right, thank you. Dan, I see you nodding. Being a consultant, can you share some experiences with us where you had exactly, I guess this is not the first time that you have been asked on how could an L&D department make sure that they are strategic partners in scenes though? So could you share some of your experience from the past? How can we as an L&D really make sure we get our seat at the table?
So I completely agree with what Alex just said. I think that speaking numbers is crucial. And I think that getting a seat at the table is not easy, but if we're there, let's take for example these changing days today with COVID-19 and everything that's going on. I think it's a huge opportunity, because if we can say, okay, we need to pivot the company, we need to change something, we need to let go of some of the people, and if other people work more, then if we can explain how the training and how the development that we give to our employees can actually save us money, can actually give us the edge, because we can reskill this group into doing something else, we can upskill this group in order to bring something to the table. And when we start talking numbers, this can save us X amount of dollars, or the KPIs that you're talking about. In order to get there, this is what we need to do, because that's what worked for us in the past, because we know what are the pain points of our employees, because we have all the data. So I think data and numbers is crucial. And I think starting to talk about, I saw the poll that ran just now, and over 50% said that they're contributing to the business. So if we're not just talking about it, but we're showing it, if we have a dashboard that shows what happened during the last, I don't know, year in L&D, and this is what happened, this is how many managers grew, this is what we do, and you show it and you explain the numbers of this and the engagement and the money that we save from, instead of recruiting, just training people. I think all of this combined, and we need to change the language, which is much more numbers oriented, which is just, that's why I know that so much when Alex was talking. This is the way to become more strategic. This is the way to open the ears of the stakeholders that we're trying to work with. And also, when you see something like we have now a crisis, I personally know one of to his manager, the chief people officer, and came to him with a plan on how to change the way we train people in order to help, they were doing some kind of pivot in order to help them go towards the pivot much faster. And it came with numbers that he thinks there's no system, but he came with the numbers that he thinks that's going to help. And I think, and they actually took on some of his advices, and they're now working on that. So I think that's the way to gain, being active, talking numbers, and have enough data in order to make sense when taking a decision.
We haven't agreed on that question up front, so sorry if I put you to a spot here, but this just came to my mind. What would you say is the most powerful KPIs if speaking about setting up a dashboard, which you have seen using companies in the past?
So the dashboards I know for L&D are talking about engagement, satisfaction, and completion. These are the dashboards that I know of L&D. This is the dashboard that I had in the L&D team that I managed in the past. And I would like to see, I think the best thing to see is money spent versus time spent in the organization, promotions of people that went through different kind of L&D activities. And I would like to see each training connected to a KPI. We're sending, I don't know, X to data to learn different kind of data tools because we need to do this. And I would like to see the connection and the growth in dashboards. Let's say that we're teaching some kind of Power BI or Tableau or anything that's connected to data. Then I want to see an increase in my dashboards in the data that's been manufactured in my company. That's where I would like to see things. I never saw such a dashboard, but that's how I would like to see.
Avi, I see you're nodding. Anything which you can add to what Dan already said, and thank you, Dan, for sharing that. What would you add to that? What could help us as L&D to really set up a powerful dashboard?
Yeah, so I see Dan have glasses, so I want to give him a new glasses, and we want to give the L&D glasses to the organization's skills. Okay. If you're talking about skills management and not like learning activities, is completely different language. It's more about strategy. If I can put you in a place that you have skills gap analysis in all your organizations, because you're doing these small assessments around all the relevant skills, and give you benchmark from other organizations because we have like data to compare to. And then exactly what Dan said, build the training programs according to KPIs and make sure it's aligned with the business strategy, okay? And see what's happening after that. We're creating like this circle of assessment, learning, and then evaluation of real-time projects with automatic feedback. So in live, you can see the skills and how it's affecting the KPIs. And yeah, I think it's like, it's what we said in the beginning of how marketing became something that is really data-driven, and now learning is coming to this point, and still it's in our soul, and it's something that it's not always measurable, and we need to find a way to measure also the soft side and the management training. But if we'll talk numbers, management will be in the same point.
Thank you. Alex or Gudrun, do you want to add anything?
I'm sorry. Yes, one thing that I wanted to add is you know, we have a lot of the quantitative data, and obviously that's the easier, well, no, it's not easy, but easier than the qualitative. But you know, with the new methodologies and possibilities we have also to go into qualitative data, I think that is something we need to look into now, and also moving forwards, how can we use that? And this is also a discussion I had with Karen, is, you know, I like the assessment and the evaluation part. I also think it's, apart from doing the evaluation right away, I would love to see the long-term evaluation, because you know, this is one of the paradoxes we are dealing with in L&D, is that, you know, the speed we're working at and developing companies and products is exponential, as you all know, but learning is usually not, because learning is still a very slow process, right? And I think we need to also look at the long-term performance and impact, and then said it's, you know, it can be career progression, it can be complexity of project somebody's taking on. but that usually is just not one element. So I think, again, combining the dots and seeing, okay, and there's a lot of data, right? If one person did one training, and now you look at the size of the project, and somebody else did 3 trainings, did the combination help them to get there or not? And I think this is something we can read from the data. So it's not just, I think it's very important to do the singular evaluation of one intervention, but we need to look at a larger time frame and, again, connect the dots. And one of them is qualitative data. But then again, and you mentioned it before, Vanessa, it's a luxury that usually corporations have, if even, right? If I come and say I need 2 data scientists for L&D, you know, everybody's gonna look at you and say, what for, right? So I think it really depends also what context you're working in, and what is the role of L&D in a company. I think that's very important. Startup scene, often L&D is a compensation.
Yeah.
Offer it because everybody offers it. And not everyone is like that, obviously, but I often see that there's a lot of learning to do. But if you get there, this would be super interesting, obviously, to connect those dots and then also make projections, right? Which are the things that work together and do not work together. It's like putting together 3 pills, right? And as a doctor, you need to know what is the interaction and what is the harm and risk. That's kind of the idea I'm coming from as an analogy, is what are the elements we can put together to boost the whole thing, the effect, and what is maybe also hindering, you know, the learning.
Exactly. Thank you, Alex. Gudrun, anything?
Yeah, maybe just my 2 cents on this. So I'm fully checking on what Avi and Alex mentioned. I think what I would add in terms of my ideal dashboard would probably also show a comparison between, let's say, people or employees we invested more in terms of learning and development and people we invested less in, and why? Because then it would definitely show a difference, probably in promotions, in churn, etc. So I think this is also something that's somewhere in my head, and we started doing this a bit. So comparing, for example, our high potential group that really gets more learning input, they get a higher learning budget, they get more targeted learning offerings, they are exposed to projects, etc. They can also put their skills into practice, and they also have mentoring. And we started comparing, let's say, this group with the rest of the organization, and are constantly seeing, let's say, a bit of a progress in this direction. We see the churn is lower, people stay with the company longer, the promotion in this group is way higher, etc. So this is probably something I would still add to what that's
a great tweak. We have to think about that further. Going a bit away from the metrics on our work, basically, and moving a bit more our person into focus. So which values and knowledge do you think, Gudrun and Alex, can we as people bring to the table, which are sometimes even not seen or understood by our executive colleagues?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if you saw it in my CV, but I'm also studying psychotherapy. So I'm currently enrolled in psychotherapy study, and I'm a big fan of the person-centric approach. And I would say this is what we as HR, as learning and development specialists, can bring to the organization. I think that often senior leaders are busy with purely managing business operations and probably need a sparring partner to really think about details, how certain initiatives or non-initiatives impact our people. And I think this is where we can play a major role in. And I think we can, I can talk about this now for hours, but I think we can provide valuable support when it comes to accommodating different people's needs, to make sure line managers or managers can flex their leadership types to different personalities. So there's not a one size fits all approach. We can support in creating an inclusive work environment where basically everybody can be themselves when they come to work. So I think this is just a few, and again, I could speak on for hours, but I'll leave it to some of the other speakers.
Okay, thank you, Gudrun. Alex, any insights from you, what you think we can bring to the table as people and as our trait?
I think that you know, when you come from a learning development again, often we're seen as, the sidecar of the motorcycle, which can be an advantage as well, because we can do a lot of fun projects and nobody is always constantly looking at your fingers. But I interact a lot with people, and I get a lot of input, and I get a lot of insight beyond engagement, and having that knowledge of what is that people, are busy with in the organization, what are the things that, they wish for, they would like to. So the whole people aspect that we're naturally involved in making sense of that and bringing that back on a higher level, just seeing what is a dynamic that is happening, and that doesn't have to be just training. It can be a cultural dynamic that you see where you say, hey, maybe we should do something about it. And maybe to give you a very clear example is, we just ran NVC workshops, nonviolent communication, for everyone, because it appeared that, all of the feedback cycles, the performance management, whatever was talked about, the feedback always seemed to be very good when it was about praise, which we know, but critical feedback was not always easy for people, because also the culture is a very positive and a very harmonious culture. So the question was, this was not somebody came and say, oh, we need this, right? It was the observation that we had and talking to people. It's like, yeah, I feel comfortable about that. And so out of that was, the idea was born, not on my table, but on one of my colleagues, is maybe we should, learn how to be more critical and add this to the culture. And this could only have been happen because we interact with the people. And obviously our knowledge and experience that we as person bring in, also, we all work in different positions and different, I come more for a corporate world, also bringing that in, all that knowledge. And those people that know me know that I love to ask the mean questions and open-ended question, but I don't always have an answer, but I like to put my questions out and say, this is a question I have in my head. I have no idea what to do about it, but I want you to understand that this is something that's occupying my mind. And I think we should do that more often, because, then it's also seen that we really try to see the whole system and work with the whole system. But it doesn't work if we're just, grinding and offering trainings, but if we have an eye on what is happening in the organization and bring that to the table. It's not always easy, but easy has never been my choice. So I love to do that. And it's interesting to see how the reactions are. And sometimes people come back after 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 months. I was like, that question didn't let me go, and I was thinking I could do this and that. And that for me is a huge success, right? There's no KPI for that. That's my little personal successes when somebody comes back and say, you got me thinking about it.
That is
And
a great
maybe
one.
we do a pilot project, because that's what I like to do, because that's the easiest way to get things into the organization. So this is a nice way to, and which people are more receptive for that kind of discussion. So being strategic, who you drop which ball to is probably also part of the personal learning. And
Alex, I'm staying with you. I mean, we've heard in the last poll that the number one topic and number one work we are supposed to deliver is supporting the corporate goals and business goals. How would you describe your L&D strategy building process to support companies' main focuses?
It sounds easy, but yes, I start with the business goals, right? Often a lot of companies still have a strategy, which is more long-term, but also the short-term. I think we need to take those goals, and nobody's going to help us translate them, right? Because it's not the marketing and everybody knows. And I think this is where we come in as experts and say, okay, where are the points where we actually can add something? And what I like to put out there is not coming and saying this and this and that we're doing, but these are possibilities how we can support you to reach your goal, for example, or a specific goal. And that can be the skill mapping. That can be about, finding. That was my speaker. And translating that. But I think we need to help making that translation. So that should not be done just, somewhere in our little room and say, hey, we came up with the right idea, because that's what people expect. I said it before, come and develop me. Yeah. But I like to sit down and say, and Gudrun also mentioned it, what are your pain points? What are the things that worry you most about reaching this goal? And then trying to see, is there any element in there
that we can support through learning and development and making an offer about it. And then deduct it. Obviously, that's on the very specific business side. Then also we need to think about the whole organization. Leadership development has been talked about. This is one of my favorite topics, because I think we have a lot of leverage there, but that's something that you're not going to ask, what do you want to do or what do you want to become? That's where I go and look at the values. That's where I go and look at the purpose and say, how do I translate this into leadership, and how do I translate this leadership behavior, and how do I translate this into training and development? So there's different aspects, but it's always deducting from what the business needs to achieve. And we said it in the beginning, if we cannot show and go back and say, hey, we need 100,000 because this is the impact that it's going to have on the business goal, we're always going to be a service center, right?
Right.
Trainings. So doing all that process, then going back, and I love a participatory process, right? Not just deciding, going back, so this is an offer, what resonates, what does not. And then it always depends on the means you have. I mentioned it before, it's nice when you have large budgets. When you don't, you have to become creative. And we all know, if there's a crisis or, there's bad times, I always say there's two budgets that are cut. First marketing and a second one L&D. Usually L&D and then...
All right, exactly. And that directly, thanks for that pathway, Alex, brings me to our next question. And especially in times like this, being a strategic partner and showing we are not only a cost center is essential, because COVID-related chaos, development budgets are cut massively and whole departments are eliminated. How can L&D still stay at the table? Avi and Dan, can you share any insights, any consultation from your end, what we can do as L&D?
Yeah, maybe I'll try to start with a high level. I think that the future of work is one of the key challenges in the world. And we as L&Ds, we are here to solve it, because it also includes the need in new skills and in workforce optimization. And we live in a world, especially in tech, where R&D is the king. But we all know and realize that L&D is your people's R&D. And I think this is like a key sentence that the people that working in HR and L&D need to go to the management, because L&D is our employees' R&D. And this is why it's so important. And if you look at COVID-19 and you want your organization to be agile and to change and to be more adaptive, and you want the same for your employees, but from the other hand, you're saying, okay, I can't train you to be this person that I want you to become or to learn or to be advanced to. So we have a problem, and it's crucial. Now, you have to speak, I think, your management language. If you have a manager that is like a learning lover, great, good for you. If it's a data-driven, hardcore manager, go to the numbers, bring the use cases. And if I'm looking at the people, it's really hard. People went out for vacation, they're feeling unnecessary. It's a disaster for the organization. Now you need to bring them back, if they're coming back, to a point that they are necessary. And we know that companies are looking to do more with less. If you want to do more with less with your employees, so you're actually saying that you want people to have more skills. Maybe at the end, it's because you will have less jobs, but it's all coming to the point that learning is crucial and you need to know how to sell it inside your organization. Now, if you have some kind of budget, you have to optimize it. Like we saw that we have to do the learning programs in a way that you learn exactly what you need in order to get over the gaps that you have. Not everybody needs to learn the same when we're talking about the SQL, for example. And if you don't have a budget, so it's not just the budget, it's also the culture. And even if in these times you're saying we're investing time in learning and you're taking the activities that went good for you in the organization and being active and creating something around it, and building a team in the company around learning and the fire of creation, and we need to be changed because of the COVID-19. This will probably bring back the budgets as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Avi. Dan,
yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I think doing more with less is actually a key now, and I think that understanding that how we help the organization do more with less. And once again, I said it in my previous answer, be active about it. Come with a plan on how to train the people in order to help us get there, and decrease budget, but show how a decreased budget can still get us faster to where we want to go. Talk about the benefit of growing employees at these chaotic times, because if we can give the employees an added value, the employees that we value and we don't want to let go, then this can actually increase engagement by 10 times more than it was in the past. And also connect to the numbers. Understand that if we're now in a serious decrease of revenue and things are changing, be very, very creative in your ideas on how to do this. Train specific people to train the trainer. Work on specific skills that are the future skills of your organization, and come prepared. Don't be passive and wait for the managers to come to you. Come to them with plans on how to get there. For this, you need to be very, very close to the business and understanding what's going on. But if you come prepared, and if you come with a plan, and if it's low cost and it's focused, I think that people will understand the value and will continue using you, working with you. Using you is actually a bad word, but working with you. That's my 2 cents on this answer.
Thank you both. Which actually, Dan, you just mentioned it. We need to be creative, and it reminds me actually of my first job when my very first manager told me, Vanessa, you're an L&D. I know how to spell that. We don't have budget. Do whatever you want. Convince our CEO and you can do it. So that was me at 21, sitting there with all my luck and my passion about L&D and trying to figure something out. And being thrown back into that situation with budgets being cut. I think creativity at the moment is one of our main assets we need to bring to the table as well. So I want to open it to the whole panel now, to give our audience some tangible takeaways as well. What is creative ideas you came up in the past to make sure we make the most of the little budgets that we still have?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and probably HelloFresh is in a bit of a different situation because we are actually quite lucky to be probably winners of the crisis, because actually we're flourishing. So we didn't really have the issue of having to cut budget, but of course we had to completely adjust the way we train our people and we develop our people. And actually what I found over the last couple of months or over the last couple of weeks is that people are actually quite eager to connect online in times of social distancing. So I think a very simple thing that we found pretty useful is to install online forums so people can connect with each other, especially in times when they cannot connect in person. So we have, for example, leadership circles that are happening on a monthly basis where tech leaders meet to discuss whatever issues they're facing. We are also coming back to peer learning initiatives that are rather simple, but also cost efficient. I think it's also a great time to come back to the good old 70-20-10 model of development, focusing on the 70% of the method. And overall, I think there's several tools that you can use. I don't know, let's talk about Bloom, that you can use for nice video-based content, etc., which doesn't cost a fortune, and you can use it nicely to share knowledge, etc., throughout the company, also in times when you cannot connect and where budget is scarce.
Thank you, Gudrun.
I would like to add 2 things. One thing is, I don't like to refer to people in organization as human resources, but if we look what resources the humans have that are in organizations, that is just so much untapped potential. And I'm not just talking, you know, the business, you know, the BI specialist teaching BI. So many people have done different things in their careers. They have done communication trainings and coachings, whatnot. And there's such a wealth of knowledge, and tapping into that. So using your internal network, and that goes into the direction of peer learning, but it doesn't have to be, right? Peer learning lives from I have a need and you have a need. This could be I have something to offer. So what we started doing is, look, you know, giving people the opportunity to share their knowledge that they have learned somewhere else, and that is maybe not something they're using in their work now, because we're always looking at what they bring for the job now. So seeing what is there, and if you just send out a little survey asking people what are the 3 skills you could actually do a 2-hour training or learning about it, you would be surprised how many interesting topics you could have. And maybe this is going to be knitting, and it's not going to be data science, but you might think of why this could be important, right? This could be important in times of COVID and social distancing. I'm just making it very, very simple, but ask that. So use the internal resources that you have. The second one is also tap into your network, right? There's a lot of people out there that, you know, were not able to work, or, you know, a lot of trainers that are independent, that obviously there needs to be some kind of a trade-off. But I reached out and said, there's not much I can offer you because I don't have money, but I can offer you a window. Maybe you have a training you want to test, you know, happy to do so. When we declare it as that and say, you know, this is a test, or we give them the possibility to be exposed and use the name afterwards and say, hey, don't do an 8-hour workshop, because I feel bad, you know, asking them for an 8-hour workshop if I can pay them. But maybe it's going to be, you know, a smaller part which they can test, or they can use the name, and that can be a return on investment for them, having the names on it. And you know, obviously after 20 years in the business, I know a lot of people, but you all know each other now. So even tapping into that and saying, do you have something that you could offer? And I also found that during this time of crisis, a lot of people are also just willing to say, you know what, I'm gonna give you 2 hours, I don't care. I'm happy to do something and feel that, you know, I'm having an impact into something. And it's not about exploiting that, obviously, but to build a win-win situation. And I remember I had this discussion with Ola. I said, you know, do you think, you know, how would you feel if I approached you, because I felt bad about it? And we had a discussion and said, maybe this could, you know, anybody can choose, but it can be a way to also work with people you might want to work with in the future. And this is maybe a good moment to do some test runs. And obviously, if I used to be a freelance trainer, you want those opportunities, because maybe it's not that person, but, you know, it's the one person that was in a course that is going to tell their partner at home how great it was, and they're going to book it. So any exposure can be nice, and you can build a little, you know, mini catalog with mini workshops. That is, I believe, always better than not doing anything at all, or being passive, as Dan said. So use your resources internally and use your resources externally, and maybe also offer yours, because I think that's what I also said. I'm going to do some coachings for free. I'm going to do some trainings for free. Be part of it. And, you know, I think don't just take, but also give. But that's, you know, the classic rule number 1 in networking is always give and not just take. So I think that can be helpful.
Can I add something? Can I add a short sentence to that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
One of the things that one initiative that I like during this time is companies that connected, and people from one company came to the other company to train on for free. One company gave a technological training, and the other company gave data training to the teams, like switching of trainers, which was very interesting and also very I don't know how to say the word, very friend-like, and so yeah, I like that idea. So that's also great.
It's a great idea. It's a great idea. Yeah. And also, Alex, using our own power and internal knowledge better is a great way, I guess, we can leverage on. Avi, anything you want to add from your experience with companies? What have they done so far in COVID-19 times?
I actually wanted to hear if you have examples from Philipp Morris, it's really interesting to hear. And for me, I think what Alex said about listen, and we had a discussion about it a few months ago, I think it was the key to be creative. I mean, I know examples, but it was all around listen. Something is happening, your employees are feeling it in their way, listen to what they need and act accordingly and be active.
Yeah. Yeah, let me share some things. I mean, we have a very creative team, and we did actually what Alex was supposing. We did leverage our internal workforce in a way of setting up internal trainer pools, and it is super surprising if you approach people and ask them how open and motivated they're getting in just stepping out of their current role and doing something they're really into it. And even if you ask them to do it on top of their work, don't even hesitate, because most of them, and this is my experience I had, super happy to support and super happy to use the skills they might not even be able to use in their daily work to support others by that. And we set up a mentoring program, as well as use internal coaches who had basically the certifications but didn't actually use it within the company so far. So a super high volume we generated, and really good feedback we gained basically from that one as well. And when it comes to motivational factors, our talent acquisition team was super creative in how could we best onboard our people as well, making sure that they can be included from day one and start getting effective and bring their knowledge and power to the street directly. I was surprised when I got a new employee recently that I got a big box of cakes. And all our team got a big box of cakes to make sure that we can have a coffee chat with our new employee on a kind of regular basis, to directly include them and feel them welcomed, and make sure that they start getting their network set up, as this is one of our most important success factors as well, especially in times like that. If you're joining a new company, not having the network, it is super difficult to get stuff done. And this is things where we are spending a lot of time on thinking, how can we, because we were used to having a network evening like every month, some drinks in our canteen, which obviously we can't do anymore. Having a after work with like 50 people is also not very helpful. So we started breaking it down into smaller pieces and groups, and started doing kind of games in between, which in the beginning everyone was a bit smiling and laughing about, but it works actually very well. People are engaged, people like to join, and you start even creating a bigger network in times where people don't see each other. So this is really something where I think you can do a lot to keep workforce engaged, motivated, and still telling them and giving them the value they need. Perfect. So looking at time, I think we have 12 more minutes. Ola, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to use that time to actually see if we have any questions from our audience, which yes, Ola is nodding heavily, which we could tackle now to also make sure that we can support you wherever needed with the great panel we have today. So Ola, if I may put it over to you, or you share the screen so we can go through the questions. Here we go. Is there anything? Oh yeah, this, Dan, you talk about measuring results for L&D. Can you give a specific example on how we can do that?
I think Avi spoke about it.
Okay.
No, I'm going to give a specific example that I don't have a specific example. What I would like to see is what happened during a course. What happened, like to see, I think we spoke about skills analysis and the gaps, and I want to see how things changed throughout the course, or how people got into the course and how did they come out. I want to see, other than the regular engagement rising, completion rates, I want to see, I want to connect courses to their KPIs that we gave. So before we start a program, I want to give specific KPIs and measure them throughout the course. That's what I was talking about. I don't yet have an example. That's where I would like to see this area going towards.
Great, thank you. I see Iliana asked us, the argument train rather than hire, I really spoke to you. Thinking about how to make this happen with data, what are good practices about talent skill mapping? Can you share with us? Any of you?
Yeah, so if I understand correctly the question, in the example that I give from the bank that we worked with, it was around how to train internally 20 data analysts out of hundreds that they wanted to train. So basically, what we have in mind when we're working on our skills management platform is a journey that you can give all your employees these small assessments and then create the skills gap analysis. But then this will unlock the learning activity. Now, the learning activity will take you through a journey of asking you questions, see exactly what you don't know, and then teach you in the most effective way this point, and then evaluate your skills at the end. And what we did around data was creating, even without a platform, a wide test that can bring everything that we learned in Elevation around how to think in an analytic way to see who have this kind of thinking, and asking questions that are more business focused. And then we were in a point that we can help the bank realize who can be in a point that he will be a data analyst in the shorter way or period of time.
Okay, thank you. At the moment, on-site trainings are not possible. People already do video calls throughout the day while working from home. Has anyone integrated online coaching sessions via an app from you? Gudrun is smiling.
So the short answer is no. What we are doing currently, we are testing, let's say, in a coaching development loop. Well, this is how we call it, with an external provider, where always 3 of our employees are meeting with a coach to discuss a specific issue, but we just started this. So we are doing something similar, and of course then also everyone is remote. We're testing, but I cannot share any results with you yet.
Okay.
Maybe I can add just not from Blinkist, but from SoundCloud, where I came from, where we had coaching for both contributors and leads. And I just heard from one of my old colleagues that they said, thank God we have it because it was so helpful in this time. And people that know me, I'm a coach myself. I love coaching. I think every employee should have a coach, not just when the problem comes up, but actually on all the time. So and from my colleagues from CoachUp, I also know that the usage increased exponentially because this was one of the most or the easiest thing to implement if you have the technology. And I'm not just talking about coaching on I have an issue with working from home, but really using it as a development tool while you cannot attend trainings and do more of the self-reflection part, which I'm a big fan of, and use that time. And people are more willing because it doesn't add to their day. It's much easier to actually integrate. So not my own experience, but I've heard that it really was used much more than before.
I can quickly share from us. We are currently doing a pilot with an online coaching company. Our management team was surprised how this might work. They were super supportive. And I just came off the phone this morning with a colleague who started it recently. She is super happy with it. She says it is perfect. The coach is working far better than she was ever expecting. So I can only put that forward. It is a great tool, and we should, as Alex, you just said, not only start using it if it's high burning, we should really provide people opportunities to use a coach and use coaching, even to just strengthen themselves and help them even up front. The next question, how do you get buy-in from your salespeople who argue, well, you sent me to a training, I cannot work on my provision, you are costing me money? A good one, actually. So any insights on that one? Anyone who faced that before?
It never happened. I never heard that. I think that it's part of the change of language. Mm-hmm. If the salesperson understands that if he goes into some kind of workshop and you show him data that it's going to increase his sales by X%, that it's going to shorten his the cycle with customers by X%, and eventually he's going to do much more dollars, or he's going to do a better prospecting, whatever the training is, and you show him data. This is what people that went through this workshop, this is what happened to them 3-6 months afterwards, and these are the skills that they gained from it. I don't see a salesperson saying, oh, I can make more money. No, don't do it. So I think that if you speak in their language and if you give them the tools, it's a non-issue. Today we're trying to convince them because we don't exactly know what they're gaining out of it.
Yeah, you know, a picture I just have in mind, there is this comic of two people pushing a wagon with squared wheels, really driving it deeply into the earth while someone tries to tell them on the benefit of round wheels. Yeah. This is kind of the picture I'm just having while people tell me I don't want a training, this is just costing me time. They somehow might not have understood the point, and we might have to, as you said, try to bring it over in their language a bit better so they can follow us. How do you define KPIs for L&D related to culture and soft skills, especially inclusion? I've seen another question on there which also goes a bit in that direction. How can we measure anything more than the completion rate? So like the hard facts on the soft sides, basically. So any insights from your ends? Maybe Avi, this is something which you can help us.
We started with the skills that are more easy to measure, like data and coding and other skills. But when we're looking at softer skills, everything that we can assess and evaluate in the end, we can measure. We create scenarios of how you will react. We can create like a few ways to behave in this specific scenario, and we can assess what you know or how you're behaving today, and then give you some learning materials, and in the end evaluate again if you learned what we wanted you to learn. So I think everything at the end can be basically measurable in some way, but there is this gap between we measure if you know Excel, or we measure if you're best in other skills. By the way, I hate the word soft. I think it's easier to be a coder or to learn Python rather to learn communication skills. So we called it power skills.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. One last one to round that up as a positive. We always we talked a lot about all these struggles we're having and how we can bring ourselves up and seen. But what excites you the most on your work field? What is it that keeps you going and drives you every morning?
Yeah, for me, I think it's seeing people develop and spending, let's say, creating a nice career inside the company based on their own efforts, and probably by providing them a good framework to grow.
Thank you.
For me, it's the ammo. When you go into if I'm going into learning and development, when someone does something and he doesn't realize why he needs to do it, and then something happens, and there's that, oh, so that's what this is why I go to work, because I want to see the people understanding it like throughout their experience.
Anything else?
I like the position of being in between. I mean, we see how we can affect people's lives and how we can change people's lives through training and education in general, in a way that it's supporting the company's efforts and making the company more productive, and then just like everybody is more happy and everybody have what's to win.
Great, thank you. And with that, and looking at time, I think we made it on dot. And I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I want to thank the great panel for sharing your expertise and your experiences in the past. It was great having you all. And I want to just close that with stating and quoting what Avi, you said earlier. L&D is your employees' R&D. And I think this is a great one to push back on our business as well. With that, wishing you all a great rest of your evenings. Do well, enjoy your roles, and having a lot of success going further. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Thanks for the facilitation, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.